coming up on the Knowledge Industry Podcast.
It is possible for anybody to build an online business. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter about your geography, your health, your age. All of those things doesn't matter on the internet.
So today's topic is, you may have created that course, but how do you sell it? My guest is Lucy Griffiths, who's the author of Make Money While You Sleep, and she's sold tens of thousands of online courses.
Do you sell online courses or run live workshops? Do you have expertise that can help people in life or business? Are you even running an online training empire from your kitchen table? Then you're part of the knowledge industry, a fast-growing industry that means that you can learn almost anything, and anyone can create a business around what's between their ears. Welcome to the Knowledge Industry Podcast with your host, Mark Egan.
Okay, so Lucy, great to talk to you. Just set the scene. Where are you at the moment?
Hello, I am in a very frosty Cotswolds. I was just out for a run earlier and the frost is thick on the ground and it's a bit icy and slippy. So I'm in the Cotswolds, just in Tetbury. So Prince Charles is my neighbour, but he doesn't ever give me any fruit and vegetables over the fence, sadly.
You've not invited him over for tea? Say, come on, Charlie, come on, we'll put the world to rights. Come around for a quick natter.
No, he bizarrely doesn't want to get to know me. So Camilla, I've seen a couple of times, had a little wave, but no, Charles is having none of it.
Well, he must be intimidated by your success, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I'm really glad that we're getting a chance to talk, because there are so many similarities between your story and mine. So firstly, I spent some time when I was young growing up in Germany, in Detmold, North Rhine-Westphalia, and you spent some time growing up in...
When I was about 6 months old, my parents packed up their Ford hatchback, 4 kids and a trailer tent, and drove across Europe. And we went to live in Berlin. Our house wasn't ready. So my parents decided to camp by the side of an airfield, which was RAF Gatow. And we lived, and I was a baby, remember, and my mum had 4 kids, and we lived in this, this trailer tent for about 6 weeks until somebody sort of discovered that we were doing this and then felt sorry for my mum and got us some accommodation until we could move into a house. But that was really the start of sort of adventures and living abroad. And yeah, so we had 4 years in Berlin and then moved to Cyprus and then Hong Kong and Washington. So yeah, so I had a fairly eventful childhood, let's say.
So that's one similarity, Germany. The other one is careers. So I used to work in BBC, local radio, TV, all that kind of stuff. And you yourself also worked in the broadcast industry.
Yeah, I started out in, well, it's coming up to 25 years ago now, but local radio. Did a good few years in local radio, and then got to the point where I was interviewing various pop stars, and I remember Mariah Carey didn't want to walk downstairs, and I just thought, oh my God, I can't cope with these people anymore. And so I decided that I was going to go traveling. So I left that world behind me and went traveling, and then ended up and I didn't just say, oh, I'll get on a plane, go traveling. I went overland. So on the way, had various adventures, ended up working for a documentary series in Russia, creating this documentary about Siberia, and then ended up in Burma and met these amazing women who were running a project about, it was called the Shan Women's Action Network. And it was basically to try and help women who had been tortured by the military regime. And so I ended up working with Burmese refugees for a long time, and trained a network of Burmese refugees to film. And I always maintain those connections. So although I was freelancing and then working for different news organisations, they were always in my downtime, in my sort of loo days when I had time off, I'd go and spend time with them and work on those projects.
But then there's obviously another big pivot, which is, to what you're doing now. So what was the change between you're out there, you're using your media skills to empower people, to help them, and then now you have a business, teaching online, writing books, appearing as an expert guest on TV, all this kind of thing. How did that pivot happen?
So basically 20 years of being, sort of 15 years of being in Asia, and then the last 5 years in the Middle East. And so in that time, I was, working full time as a TV reporter, covering many different stories. I was constantly on a plane. I'd get a phone call from my bosses in New York. I worked for lots of American TV networks. And they'd say, right, go cover this story. And, whether that was tsunamis or floods or the war in Afghanistan or protests around the world. And so I'd be covering those stories, and they were huge adrenaline rushes. It was very exciting, but also, you were witnessing things that were really painful and distressing. And it was quite exhausting. And so by the time I'd done a good 15 years of it, I was pretty burned out. And so I went back to the UK thinking, okay, I'm going to, settle down, do my thing, whatever. And I'd lived all those years. I was kind of single, and I thought, right, okay, this is time I'm going to go meet someone, have babies, all of that stuff. And so moved back. So I moved back for a guy. And then we ended up splitting up, and I was really upset. And so I remember being really upset at work, and somebody came to me. It was most strange. And they said, can we just have a quick, quiet word for a moment? So I was like, okay. And they basically said, did I want to go and set up a TV station in Iraq? And for most people, they would say, what are you talking about? No. But for me, it's like, okay. So I literally, off I went a couple of weeks later, went and had a year setting up a TV station in Iraq, which was such a blessing. In that process, I realized that I wanted to find a different way of working with people because they were so traumatized. And so that's when I got really interested in coaching. And so while I was there, in my time out, you'd sort of go in for a certain amount of time and then have time out that I could do. So I did a master's degree in coaching. So I did that and was coaching people there. And I was working very much, I sort of focused my degree around PTSD and using coaching to help with trauma and PTSD. And so that was really how I sort of started coaching, really, by working with people with PTSD. And it was a lot of former journalists or journalists who, have seen and witnessed terrible sights, as well as some aid workers and also the refugees I was working with. And then when my son was born in 2015, should I say, I sort of took a break for a while, but it just didn't feel right to be doing. I just was no longer in the world of doing, jumping on the plane and PTSD. And I was sort of very much in the motherhood bubble. And I had, when I gave birth, I had a pretty traumatic birth and ended up having anal and urinary incontinence. So it meant that I couldn't walk down a hill without wetting myself. I couldn't really, at times it was difficult to leave the house. And so the world that I'd inhabited before, where I was kind of jumping on the plane, when I was pregnant, I was covering the conflict in Ukraine and dodging these Russian rebels. And, that whole world, which was very much about me being, I was very much quite gutsy and, I'd go off and do lots of different things. That whole world, sort of my world just shrank. And so I didn't really feel like I could actually go into an office. I was very, the thought of basically wetting myself in the office was like, oh my God, I don't know and it's not possible for me to even, carry on professionally.
So in other words, lots of the options that you would naturally go back to, you didn't feel comfortable for those reasons to go back to them. So you then had to kind of think of a new way to do
Yes. And I was having to go to the hospital twice a week for like various physio, and I was doing this kind of experimental treatment with acupuncture. And so it meant there was quite it was a good 2 days a week that were kind of out with having treatment. And so I started basically while I was breastfeeding my son. I started on my phone just thinking, okay, well, why don't we just build an online business? And so it sort of evolved out of that. Very much went back to the coaching that I'd done the master's degree in, but I'd sort of thought, okay, how can I make this into something that's actually a business that's tangible? And so from that thought, well, I could teach people. I'd worked a lot with kind of doing some consultancy with various big organizations, Ford and Unilever, about helping their CEOs with being camera confident. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I just do that, but for small businesses and do it online. And that was really the starting point. And so I was working very much still in a sort of one-to-one capacity, or I was going and doing filming with people. But again, that was quite difficult with all the health issues I had. And so that was really the starting point for me to start to build a course. And I was doing it while being very much a full-time mum. My son is autistic, and so I'm very hands-on with him. And so I sort of would do it in the evenings. A lot of my clients, the one-to-one clients I had, were in the evening just because it worked better with being a parent. And so my clients predominantly were in the US. And so I started the course, and then from there it grew, and I was able to sell it into various presentations, talk to people, use the power of Facebook and YouTube in order to sell the course. And I got to a point where now I've sold 50,000 of those courses. It's called Confident on Camera, and it's $19. So it's something that's really tangible that people can get hold of and access easily.
But I have to stop you there, because there's like a kind of a jump there, which you kind of just say, this is just threw together a course and then, sold tens of thousands of them. It's just what you do. But of course, a lot of people have the same idea, thinking, I'll create a course. I've got some expertise. They make their course and nobody buys it. Now, you didn't have necessarily a background in advertising or, online business or whatever. So, you've created your course, but how did you actually get that in front of people? And, why do you think you were able to succeed when so many other people have courses which nobody's accessing?
I think in the beginning, no one was really doing what I was, now there's more people who are definitely teaching, doing what I do. And I'm constantly seeing people who sort of either are using my name and that I've copyrighted, or that, so I think in the beginning that there weren't many people doing what I was doing. So that was number one. Number two, I really did leverage when Facebook was a more friendly algorithm place. I'd go into Facebook groups and do trainings. And so that helped me to start selling in the first place. And I really harnessed the power of YouTube in order to get found with keywords. So using the power of Google search with blogging and Pinterest, and using all of those tactics, which worked really well, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. Now Facebook has shifted. It's harder to get seen, and it's harder to grow an audience right now. So at that point, as things started to pick up, then I was able to say, right, I'm going to start doing Facebook ads. So used Facebook ads in order to sell my courses. And that obviously got me so many more millions of eyeballs on my courses. And that's really enabled me to sell a great deal more.
And what was your process of, your audience before? You, like I said, were CEOs and Iraqi news anchors and stuff like that. Obviously, this is a completely different market. How did you go about that process of thinking, well, who am I appealing to here? And how am I making sure that my message is connecting with the right kind of people? Was that something that just was intuitive, or did you go through some kind of process or survey?
So I always recommend that you talk to people that are around you, who you connect with. I think that I sort of appeal to, I'm in my 40s, and I appeal to people who are in their 40s and 50s. That's not to say I don't have, the stats do say that I have a younger demographic as well, but I definitely, the people who buy from me are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I've got some clients actually who are in their 80s, unbelievably, creating businesses. And I've got this amazing guy called Stan who is building a community, and he's a real character who was telling me a story yesterday how he was there for Martin Luther King's speech, "I Have a Dream." And, so people have vast experience and background. Doesn't matter what age you are, you can build a course and build a successful online business. And that's the amazing thing that's so liberating about the online world, that you just need a laptop or your phone and an idea and a willingness to share it with people. And
obviously you've written the book now, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Seems to be on lots of bestseller lists and all that. What do you, if obviously people need to get the book, but what would, one or two of the main kind of points or concepts you would want to get across to somebody who maybe is thinking, I've got some expertise, maybe it's a completely different field, but, I see so many people trying and failing. What would be the kind of one or two things that you would pick out and say, look, this is, if you get this right or focus on this, this is the kind of thing that makes a difference?
So definitely when you've got a nugget of an idea, you want to test it and validate it. So make sure that it is something that people really want. And you can do that quite easily by just gauging reaction from people, whether that's the mums at the school gate, people at the pub, obviously using things like Facebook groups or your social media on LinkedIn, wherever it may be. Also, surveys are great on email, or questions, quizzes, using something like Instagram stories, asking questions there. But you want to ask people if they think it's a good idea. So don't worry about, are they going to steal my idea? You really want to test it out. And because nobody, even if you might get duplications of you and they're copying your idea, nobody can take your knowledge, your expertise away from you. So test it out with people. And if they say, oh yeah, that sounds interesting, that is, read the room, think, Whereas if they say, oh my God, that's amazing, I want that, that would work so well for my brother-in-law, you then know, oh, I'm on to a winner, because you can really tell that difference in energy. And so use that to make sure that you've got the right idea. I have this client, she's a dear friend, Ashley, who, so she basically is she rescues people from the streets of New York, and so works to get drug addicts off the street and into shelters. And she's always running out of money, as you might imagine. And so she basically decided to do a course in order to kind of supplement her rental income and everything else. And she built this course, and it was selling, but it wasn't really selling. And I just felt like there's something better that Ashley could be doing? And so while she could do a course in, it was sort of working with women and how to be happy in themselves, actually her real purpose is showing other, so she's quite religious, and so she works sort of she's kind of a missionary, I guess, and so it's showing other missionaries. Her real purpose, actually, you could show other missionaries how you can also make money online. So then she was like, oh yeah, okay, and then suddenly she's now making real sums of money rather than just sort of scraping by. Suddenly now she's like, oh wow, I've got enough money that I can build a whole new women's refuge in Connecticut. I can afford to buy the house. I can have a nice life, and I'm helping other people also make more money. And so, the online world, you don't have to just do it because, and I'm talking about something where, she's completely of the extreme, where it's all about, for helping other people in her mission. But it's amazing what you do when you suddenly realize, oh, I've got that skill set, and that skill set is really needed. And so, it's flipping that switch. Sometimes you might obsess about something you've just learned. You might have just done a course in flower arranging or Reiki and think, oh, I'm going to do that. But actually, I've got 20 years experience in marketing, or I'm great at grant applications. And those kind of really niche skills, whether it's grant applications or teaching people how to make model tractors, where it's really niche, it is infinitely more appealing. It's appealing to a smaller amount of people. Like, not everyone is going to want to be interested in how to make model tractors or how to run a successful mission and, be some kind of small charity. But to those people who want that, then they're absolutely going to dive into that knowledge because there's only a few people doing it. And so the more niche you can be, the better.
But one of the challenges that those same people have, when it's like, actually, I'm not in it for the money, I'm in it for the other things, is that then they have big issues with pricing. And say, well, I really almost feel bad charging for this because I want people to have this information, this knowledge. Now, you've been successful. And interestingly, the first course that you offer is extremely kind of reasonably priced. What's your kind of approach to pricing courses and pricing products?
Okay, so there's two strategies you can really use with pricing your courses. So one strategy is that you have something like a webinar and you're selling people into the webinar, and then you have a higher priced offering. So it might be around the $997 mark. So you don't want to tip over the $997 mark on a webinar. If you are wanting to sell something much higher ticket, couple of thousand, 2,000 could be $2,000, £2,000. That's when it means that it might be you're having a video, they watch the video, and then you arrange a sales call for your course. If it's under the £1,000, $1,000 mark, then you can sell it online without needing a sales call. But you would probably need something like a webinar where it's a bigger presentation and you get them more excited about it. Whereas if you're doing something where it's a small mini course, and then you don't necessarily need to give them the whole shebang, the webinar, you can sell that for a smaller amount of money. And I like to think of that as your cupcake offering. And so essentially, like, you think you walk past the bakers and you see these amazing cupcakes, the ones that are kind of pink icing and they look really beautiful and they've got all these sparkly designs on. You think, oh wow, that's so pretty. And that's your dazzling, tempting offer. And so it's irresistible. So you have to have that cupcake. And so you get the cupcake, but then they'll say, oh, well, would you like a coffee with that? Or would you like some extra things with it? Maybe, perhaps you'd like to sit down, get a coffee for your friend. And, before you know it, you've bought not just the cupcake, but 2 cups of coffee and maybe some olives or something else as well. And not necessarily olives in the bakery, but
carry on.
but so from that perspective, it's the entry offering. And so you have something small and tangible that then feeds people into buying other things. And so if you then, it starts out being, $19, £19, 27, something like that, around that price point. But if you're then also upselling them into other things, so let's say a secondary course for say 27, and maybe a bigger course for 297. If you're then doing that process, the average order value increases from $19 to a much higher percentage. So for me, I have my initial course, and then my second course, about 40% of people buy the second course, and a smaller percentage of people buy my third course and my fourth course. But by doing that, I'm gradually increasing just by small incremental amounts. And it's literally by testing and tweaking to do this, I'm increasing the number of people who buy those other products further down my funnel. And by doing that, it means that I am making more and more profit. So I'm spending money on Facebook ads, but I'm making double, 3 times, depending on the day, how much profit I'm bringing back in to the business. And so that's how you can easily scale the business and sell a lot of courses, but also make the profit from the back end, so that you have a really strong, viable business. And then as you've got people, you get people into your membership. So I have a membership on the back, which is called Make Money While You Sleep. And so people join that, and then I get the recurring income from that every single month. And of course, people get the support of being in that community. They get support with, whether it's copywriting or Facebook ads or, all of those things that you need to run an online business and make money while you sleep. And so you give that, and you're giving value all the time. So you keep people, you want to retain people in the membership, and then you're not going out getting new leads, new customers. You are getting that recurring income every month. And so those are the ways that sort of it produces various streams of income into the business. And then, of course, you can also then have a sprinkling of one-to-one clients, work with them, and any other additional income streams that you may have as well, for other courses or other services you may have.
Brilliant. I love it. One thing that you do really, really well, which I think is also part of your success, is your kind of personal brand. You've obviously, the skills have been transferable, but obviously, like I said before, it's a different market. So, what would be your advice to somebody looking at what you've done? And they're thinking, well, like, you clearly have kind of a really coherent story, personal brand, kind of the look of everything. Now you've got the book, you've built your audience, you've built your credibility. So somebody's thinking, look, I want to build my personal brand and attract that audience. What would be your main advice to them?
So when it comes to personal branding, really think, what are my stories? What are my standout stories that make a difference? And so you want to weave those stories into everything you do. So, whether it's stories about challenges that you've had to overcome, you think of, the hero's journey. And so weave in those stories, because people want to be able to relate to people they like. Say 3-4 years ago, Instagram was kind of glossy and curated, and it was all about pretty pictures. Now it's very much about being real and authentic. So the more you can be real and authentic, the better. And so tell those stories, share challenges, things you're going through. Like I posted yesterday, I've not driven because obviously I was living in Asia, didn't drive so much. Then living in London, I didn't really drive. And then suddenly now I'm in the Cotswolds, like, oh my God, I've got to start driving. So I went for a refresher lesson the other day. And so, did a post about that, sharing about my fears about that. So be open, be vulnerable. You don't have to share everything in your life, but sharing those vulnerabilities and those stories helps people connect with you. So I definitely talk around, I'll talk around challenges I have with parenting, or like definitely during pandemic, my addiction to chocolate brownies, or how I started running and being really slow and terrible at it. So you don't have to, it's not about being perfect. But then also having a really coherent, with those stories, also recognizing like what are the things that I'm going to be known for, and so those strong brand messages of what you're going to be known for, and then of course back it up with the branding, whether that's the colors, the the logo, all of those things. And once you've got things that you like I've got quite strong personal branding around my colors, simply because I've always loved pink and red. So for me, those are my brand colors. They're in my logo, but they've always been things that I've loved. I mean, if you look at pictures of me in Afghanistan, I'm wearing a pink shalwar kameez, and like people used to be like, oh my God. Just
blending in.
Blending in with, and the Taliban art, definitely going to spot you. But that was always me. And even going to cover the craziest of stories, I'd always be turning up with a handbag, like a red handbag or a pink handbag, and people would just be like, oh my God. But it also meant that people connected with me on the ground. So I'd always find that by being that way and being myself, the number of times where I did encounter dodgy Taliban situations, I think because I was so girly, they were sort of disarmed by me. And so it got me out of dodgy situations. But in the same way, in personal branding, it helps you stand out. So I'm not saying you have to do pink if pink is not your thing, but making it really distinctive, making it beautiful. So look at people's personal branding, find out who are really good at personal branding. And one of the things I've really learned is that sometimes we sort of think we need to go for the person who's really expensive or whatever, but actually you can find your own people that aren't necessarily like hugely expensive, but you can work with them for many, many years. Like the person I've worked with for sort of 5 years. And she's a mum, and she basically does stuff for me on a Sunday, and so I have to be really organized to get it all in. And when I've tried, sometimes she's been on maternity leave or whatever and she's not available, and I've tried other people and I've maybe spent way more money, but I don't ever get that same attention to detail and the same joy and connection. So find your people. And having that team around you of people who really get you and your brand is really important.
Great. Now, there's two quick things I want to ask you before I let you go. The book, obviously, if you're online world, you're making courses, everything's going well and everything. Like, what was the reasoning behind the book? So why did you write the book? And kind of tied to that, one of the ways that you've been promoting the book is actually, appearing on TV programs, which a lot of course creators, presumably it's partly because of your media background, but, you don't see that many of the people that you see out there being successful creating courses actually being on mainstream media, being guests and all that kind of thing. So why did you write the book? And also, what was your approach to actually promoting that book with actually beyond, ads or the traditional ways of promotion?
So I have wanted to write a book since I have got little books I started writing when I was about 7 or 8. And my dad would even build me bookshelves for my books. So I've wanted to write a book for years. And I have definitely started and stopped various books along the way. So I also do joint ventures with brands and influencers, and basically do all the behind the scenes, and they're the face of their brand. And so I was working with someone who said, oh, you should meet my agent. So I met her just before lockdown, and I sort of said, oh, I've got this nugget of an idea, and I'm thinking the title is Make Money While You Sleep. And she loved it. She said, oh, yes, great. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and she was like, oh, do you think they still like that title? It's like, I think people will, because at the time I was, I'd been really ill with COVID, and despite not working for 6 months and recovery and homeschooling, I was still making money from my courses. It was still all running without me being involved in the business. And so that was, so I sort of allowed myself to recover, and then had a couple of months to write the proposal, and we took it to a couple of publishers, literally so it was like February 2021, and one of the people read it, and she literally contacted my agent immediately and said, yes, I want Lucy to write this, but I want her to write it in 3 months. And so at the time, we're just about to move to the Cotswolds, and we were in the middle of homeschooling. And so I said, okay, yes, and thought, well, there's no way I can do this till my son goes back to school. So I basically ended up not having 3 months. I had 12 weeks, and just thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do is a chapter a week and just get this done. And so that's what happened. And some weeks I would definitely be procrastinating, and I'd get to Friday and be like, oh my God, I've not written my chapter this week, and get up at sort of 4 or 5 a.m. I'm an early bird anyway, and just write, and then get it done by Sunday. And I was like, okay, phew, it's done. And once you're in the flow, you're in the flow. And so so I got it done. I delivered amazingly within 12 weeks. So that was basically how the book came about. For publicity, I would say, if you are self-publishing, it's harder to get that sort of doors to open. Whereas because I was publishing the more traditional route, the downside of publishing with a traditional publisher is they sort of control a lot more, you get less profit, but doors open. And so I was invited. I had quite a lot of media appearances, and invited to be on Morning Live, the BBC show, talking about courses and how you can make money while you sleep.
Great. Well, I mean, again, congratulations. Just getting the book written is a major achievement, and then for it to be kind of successful. And like you say, with, COVID, homeschooling, I mean, just one of those elements would normally be a good excuse for somebody. So to overcome all of those, that's great. Just in closing, if you could, sum up, and again, people need to go out and get the book and everything. What would be your sort of overwhelming or overarching message that, through your experience, through your media training, to starting an online business and all that kind of thing, there must be people out there who would benefit from following in your footsteps and doing that journey. So what would be your message to them?
It is possible for anybody to build an online business. And that is the wonders of this world, that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter about your geography, your health, your age. All of those things doesn't matter on the internet. It's about building an audience and making sure that you, connect with your people. So being true to you, connecting with your people. And then from that, once you've connected with them, offering, advice or information or support, or building that community, entertainment, and maybe it's a mix of all those things. From that, then it's being able to make offers that people want, being able to sell something. It might be one-to-one services at first. And then from that, getting into things like digital products, or maybe it's selling your paintings, whatever it may be, you can sell your services or your products. But know that it is possible. And it's just about being willing to put yourself out there, build that audience, and then making offers that people find irresistible.
Fantastic. Well, I could go on and on and on, but I know that you are busy, got many other things to do. Okay, so 2 ways that people should take action now. One is go and, if they haven't already, ordered the book, Make Money While You Sleep. And if they want to come and, check out some of your other courses, where should they?
So I'm lucygriffiths.com, and also a lot of my social media handles, whether that's Instagram or LinkedIn, is Lucy Griffiths, and then DOTCOM, so .com again. So I'd love to connect with you. I'm known to do very silly reels on Instagram, or love having a chat on LinkedIn or Facebook.
You know, it's been quite funny chatting to you, because maybe it's partly because of the similarity in some of our backgrounds, but internally I've just been nodding. I haven't stopped myself, just stop nodding like an idiot for the whole kind of thing, because even some of the kind of the terms, the way you describe things, everything, I'm just so like, yes, that's some things I always say. So I'm really pleased with your success. It's really obviously inspirational, especially, I know I don't like to get nationalistic, but it's great to see some, Brits doing well in this kind of space. But also just like you were saying at the very beginning, that, that this isn't just about making money. If you have some expertise that can help people, it's something that can have a real impact. So I wish you continued success on the book. I'm literally, as I promised just beforehand, I'm just off to Amazon to write my review. But wish you continued success, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't forget, if you want to improve the way you communicate on video, head over to markeganvideo.com for some free training. And don't forget to subscribe to the Knowledge Industry YouTube channel.